A veteran and his dog save a mechanic, inheriting a garage with his unit's hidden World War II Jeep. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. Jack, a 45-year-old war veteran, had been living a life of quiet solitude for years. His only companion was Scout, his loyal German shepherd, a dog that had stood by him through the darkest times of his life. Jack had retired from the military after 2 long tours overseas, each one leaving its mark not just on his body, but on his spirit as well. He moved to the small, quiet town of Willow Creek, where he hoped to find peace. The town was small, surrounded by dense forests and peaceful streams. Jack liked it that way. He found comfort in the simplicity. However, on this particular rainy afternoon, everything was about to change. As Jack and Scout were making their way down the main road, the storm hit with full force. The rain came pouring down in sheets, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Jack squinted through the windshield, trying to focus on the road. It was then that he saw something, a flash of movement in the distance. At first, it looked like a trick of the rain, but as they got closer, Jack could see it was a man, standing by a vehicle on the side of the road. The man appeared to be struggling, waving his arms frantically, as if trying to signal for help. Jack's instincts kicked in. He pulled over and rolled down his window. "Are you okay?" Jack called out through the pouring rain. The man's voice was barely audible over the storm, but Jack could make out a few words. "I'm stuck. I can't move it." Jack didn't hesitate. He opened the truck door and motioned for Scout to stay in the vehicle. Together, they ran to the man's side, where Jack saw the problem. The man, Mike, a mechanic from the next town over, had gotten his hands caught beneath a broken-down truck. Mike's face was pale, his breath shallow, and his eyes wide with panic. Jack immediately got to work. He moved quickly, using all the strength he had left to lift the truck just enough for Mike to pull his hand free. It was a close call. Mike collapsed onto the muddy ground, gasping for air, but Jack wasn't done yet. He helped the man to his feet, steadying him as the rain soaked through his clothes. "You all right?" Jack asked, checking to make sure Mike wasn't seriously injured. Mike nodded, still shaking. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." Jack simply nodded. It was just what he did. Helping others was second nature. Mike took a deep breath and looked up at Jack. "I'm Mike. I'm the mechanic over at the auto shop in town. Been here my whole life." Jack shook his hand. "Jack, just passing through." Mike smiled faintly. "You're a good man, Jack. I don't know how to thank you." Jack waved off the thanks. "You don't have to. Just glad I could help." After a few more minutes of talking, Mike told Jack that he owned a small garage down the road that had been passed down through his family for generations. It was a place full of old memories, and despite its rundown state, it was a place that meant a lot to Mike. "You know, Jack," Mike said, his voice filled with hesitation, "I've been meaning to retire and close up shop. But maybe, just maybe, you could take a look at it. Might be something in there for you, if you're interested." Jack was about to decline, but then he thought of something. The garage Mike spoke of could be the very thing he needed to keep him occupied, to give him something to do other than relive his past. After a short pause, Jack agreed. "I'll take a look. Can't hurt, right?" Little did Jack know, stepping into that garage would lead him down a path that would change his life forever. After Jack agreed to take a look at Mike's garage, the two of them climbed into Mike's truck, which was still parked on the side of the road, ready to head over to the mechanic's shop. The rain had slowed down, but the air was still thick with moisture. Scout, Jack's ever-loyal German shepherd, remained in the back seat, his amber eyes scanning the world outside with a calm, yet watchful demeanor. The truck bounced along the winding, narrow road leading them to the outskirts of Willow Creek, where the buildings began to thin out and the land opened up to larger plots of land. As they turned the corner onto a small dirt driveway, Jack could see the outline of a weathered, 2-story building at the end. It was clear this place had seen better days. The windows were dusty, the paint on the walls peeling, and the rusted sign hanging above the door read, "Mike's Garage," in faded letters. Jack could tell it had been a long time since anyone had really worked here. They pulled up to the front, and Mike parked the truck in the small lot in front of the building. Jack stepped out, scanning the garage with a mix of curiosity and cautious optimism. "This place used to be something," Mike said, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "My father started it, and I took over when he passed. But after my wife passed and my health started failing, I just lost the energy to keep it going." Jack nodded, understanding the weight of losing loved ones and the toll it could take on a person's motivation. "Sometimes it's hard to keep going after life knocks you down," Jack said quietly, glancing back at Scout, who was now standing in the bed of the truck, his tail wagging slowly. Mike smiled faintly and led Jack into the garage. Inside, the space was filled with old tools, worn-out machinery, and the faint scent of oil and metal. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and there was a layer of dust on everything. But beneath all the decay, Jack could see the potential. This garage had once been a hub of activity, a place where hard work and craftsmanship were valued. As Mike led Jack deeper into the building, he stopped in front of a large tarp that covered something at the far end. "There's something back there you might want to see," Mike said, his voice suddenly lowering. Jack followed him, intrigued, as they approached the tarp. Mike pulled it off with a grunt, revealing an old, rusted vehicle underneath. The body was covered in a thick layer of dust, but there was no mistaking it. It was a military jeep, one that looked like it hadn't seen daylight in decades. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He stepped closer, inspecting the jeep with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The jeep's body was weathered and worn, but the frame looked intact, and there was something about it that felt familiar. Mike noticed Jack's reaction and chuckled. "I didn't expect you to recognize it right away," he said. "This jeep belonged to your unit, didn't it?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mike nodded. "I've had it in here for years, just sitting, collecting dust. Your name is on the registration papers. I've been meaning to track you down and give it to you. After all, it's yours." Jack stood in silence for a moment, overwhelmed by the discovery. The jeep, a piece of his past, had been right here this whole time, hidden in a dusty garage, waiting for the right person to find it. His mind raced with memories of the war, of his comrades, and of the bond they had shared. "I can't believe it," Jack muttered, running his hand over the jeep's metal exterior, the cool surface sending a shiver down his spine. Mike looked at him with a gentle expression. "It's yours now. You've earned it." Jack swallowed hard, trying to keep his emotions in check. "Thank you, Mike. I don't know what to say." Mike smiled and patted him on the back. "You don't have to say anything. Just take care of it. It's been waiting for you." As Jack continued to stare at the jeep, a sense of peace washed over him. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a connection to his past, to his brothers in arms, and to a life that felt so far away now. Scout stepped forward, sniffing around the jeep as if he recognized it too. Jack knelt down beside him, scratching the dog behind the ears. "Looks like you've made a new friend," Mike said with a grin. Jack chuckled softly, his mind still processing everything. The jeep was a symbol of a time long gone, but it was also a reminder of the strength and resilience that had brought him to this point. And now, it was his once again, a piece of history, a piece of him. As Jack stood up, he looked at Mike and nodded. "I'll take care of it. I promise." Mike's eyes softened. "I know you will, Jack. And if you ever need help getting it back in shape, you know where to find me." Jack smiled gratefully. "I'll keep that in mind." They stood there for a few moments, taking in the quiet surroundings of the garage. It was a strange, surreal feeling, standing in this place that had once been full of life, now so still and forgotten. But with the jeep, with the promise of new beginnings, Jack felt a sense of hope stir in his chest. It wasn't just the jeep that had been hidden in this garage all these years. It was also the possibility of redemption, of healing, and of finding his way back to a purpose that he had lost long ago. With Scout by his side and the jeep as a symbol of his past and future, Jack knew that he was finally ready to move forward. Jack spent the next few days at the garage, slowly starting to clean up the place and work on the jeep. The rain had cleared, but the cool, damp air still lingered in Willow Creek. The sun occasionally peeked through the clouds, casting a warm, golden glow across the land. Jack and Scout had settled into a quiet routine. The garage, though old and weathered, felt different now, as if the weight of its history had lifted, and it was waiting for something new to begin. Jack had always been the type to throw himself into work, and this time was no different. He pulled out his tools, examining the Jeep piece by piece, assessing its condition. The Jeep's engine was old, but Jack could tell it still had life in it. It was going to take some work, but he was determined to restore it. Each part he touched, each screw he tightened, seemed to bring him closer to a piece of himself he had long forgotten. Scout, always by his side, watched intently, as if approving every move Jack made. It was in moments like these that Jack felt the weight of his past lift a little, as if every turn of the wrench and every adjustment he made was a step forward. Mike had told him the Jeep was special, that it had been used in the war by Jack's unit. Jack had heard stories of the old Jeep, but seeing it in person, hearing its history from Mike, made it all feel real. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a piece of his life, a piece of his brotherhood. As Jack worked late into the evening, he couldn't help but think of the men he had fought alongside, the sacrifices they had made, and the bonds they had formed. They had all promised to take care of each other, and now, in a way, Jack was fulfilling that promise. The Jeep was a reminder of the camaraderie, the loyalty, and the brotherhood that had shaped him. Jack took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from his brow, and stepped back to admire his progress. The Jeep, though still rough around the edges, was coming together. It was a slow process, but every part Jack repaired or replaced brought him closer to something that felt like redemption. He could already picture himself driving it through the streets of Willow Creek, Scout sitting proudly beside him, the wind in his hair, the engine purring beneath him. It would be a symbol of the man he had become, the man he was still becoming. As the days passed, Jack found himself growing attached to the garage. It wasn't just about the Jeep anymore. It was about the place, the work, and the people who had once relied on it. The garage had once been a hub of activity, full of laughter, stories, and the sound of tools hard at work. Now, it was quiet, but Jack could feel the echoes of that life still lingering in the walls. Mike had promised to check in on him, and Jack appreciated the gesture. He had already grown fond of the older man, whose stories of the past had helped Jack connect with the present. One afternoon, as Jack was tightening the last bolts on the Jeep, he heard the sound of an engine pulling into the lot. He turned to see Mike's truck parked outside the garage. Mike stepped out, a warm smile on his face. "How's it going?" he asked, his eyes scanning the Jeep. Jack stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. "It's coming along. Slowly but surely." Mike walked over to the Jeep, nodding approvingly. "It looks good. You've got a steady hand." Jack smiled, grateful for the compliment. "It's been a long time since I've worked on something like this. It feels good." Mike chuckled. "I figured it would. There's something about getting your hands dirty that makes you feel alive." Jack nodded, his thoughts drifting for a moment. He had never expected to find himself here, working on an old Jeep in a garage in a small town. But life had a way of surprising him. Just when he thought he had everything figured out, something would come along and shake things up. And in this case, it was the Jeep. The Jeep that had once been a part of his past, now a part of his future. As Jack and Mike talked, they reminisced about the old days, about the war, and about the men they had known. There was a bond between them, a shared understanding of what it meant to survive and carry on. "You know," Mike said, pausing for a moment, "I've been thinking. Maybe it's time to move on. I've been here for so long, and maybe it's time to let go of this place." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Mike looked around the garage, his eyes soft with nostalgia. "This garage, this town, it's all been part of my life for so long. But I think it's time for someone else to take over. Someone who can bring new life to it." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. He understood what Mike meant. He had been here, in this town, just like Jack had been in the army, stuck, in a way, trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to move forward. "Are you sure?" Jack asked, his voice thick with emotion. Mike smiled faintly. "I've been sure for a while, and I think you're the one who can do it. You've got the spirit for it." Jack didn't know what to say. He had come here looking for peace, but now he realized that he had found so much more. This garage, this Jeep, these people, everything was a part of something bigger, and it was all leading him to a future he never could have imagined. As Mike drove off, Jack stood in the garage, staring at the Jeep. The future was waiting for him, and he was finally ready to embrace it. Jack stood there for a while, his hands resting on the hood of the Jeep, the quiet hum of the garage filling the space around him. The dust that had settled on the floor seemed to shimmer in the fading sunlight that filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the worn walls. Everything felt still for a moment, as if the world outside had stopped moving. But inside, something had shifted. Jack had been looking for peace when he first arrived in Willow Creek. He had wanted to escape the ghosts of his past and find a quiet place to live out his days. But as the days passed, he realized that peace wasn't something you found, it was something you built. The garage, the Jeep, and even Mike's decision to leave. Everything seemed to be leading him to this moment. Jack took a deep breath and wiped his hands on his jeans. There was still a lot of work to do, but he felt a sense of purpose now. It wasn't just about fixing the Jeep or maintaining the garage anymore. It was about something bigger. It was about building a future, not just for himself, but for the community around him. As the evening settled in, Jack sat down in the corner of the garage, leaning against a stack of old tires. Scout lay at his feet, his eyes half closed, content and peaceful. The night air was cool and still, and Jack found himself lost in thought. He had always been a man of action, someone who moved forward without looking back. But now, with the Jeep almost restored, he couldn't help but reflect on his life, on everything that had brought him to this point. He thought about his time in the army, the friends he had lost, and the way the world had changed after the war. He had always believed that he had to carry that weight alone, that the past was something you couldn't escape. But now, as he looked at the Jeep, he realized that the past wasn't something to be buried. It was something to be honored. The Jeep wasn't just a vehicle. It was a piece of history, a piece of the life he had lived. And now, it was a part of his future. The thought gave him comfort. The sound of an approaching vehicle broke his reverie. Jack stood up and walked outside, Scout following. Closely behind, he squinted as headlights cut through the dark, illuminating the driveway. It was Mike. Jack hadn't seen him in a few days, but he had a feeling he knew why Mike had returned. "I figured I'd stop by," Mike said with a grin as he stepped out of the truck. "How's the Jeep coming along?" Jack smiled, wiping his hands on his shirt. "It's almost there. Just a few more things to do." Mike's eyes sparkled with pride as he walked over to the Jeep. "It's good to see you working on it. I can tell you found something worth fighting for." Jack nodded, his heart swelling with a quiet pride. "I think I've finally found something worth keeping." Mike stood next to him, both men looking at the Jeep in the fading light. "You know, Jack, I've been thinking about what we talked about the other day," Mike said, his voice soft. Jack turned to him, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" "About the garage," Mike said, looking down at the floor before meeting Jack's gaze. "I've been trying to figure out what to do with it for a while now, and I've realized that I'm not the one who's meant to keep it. It's yours now, Jack. You've earned it." Jack was taken aback. "I'm not sure I understand." Mike smiled, his expression filled with warmth. "I've seen the way you've worked on this Jeep, the way you've brought new life to this place. You've got a vision, Jack, and I think you're the one who can make this place something special again." Jack's chest tightened as he processed Mike's words. He had come to Willow Creek with no plan, no purpose other than to escape. But now, he felt something stir inside him, a desire to create, to rebuild, and to honor the past while embracing the future. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of that," Jack said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Mike clapped him on the back. "You're more ready than you think. You've got everything you need right here, your hands, your heart, and your dog. And you've got this place. It's yours now, Jack." Jack looked at Mike, his heart full of gratitude. "Thank you, Mike. I don't know what to say." Mike simply nodded. "No need to say anything. Just take it. It's been waiting for you." Jack stood there for a long time, the weight of the moment settling over him. This garage, this Jeep, these memories, they were no longer just pieces of his past. They were the foundation of something new, something he could build with his own two hands. As the moon rose high in the sky, Jack walked back into the garage, Scout by his side. He knew the work wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Jack woke up to the sound of rain tapping lightly against the garage roof. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of repairs, memories, and newfound purpose. The Jeep was almost finished, every inch of it meticulously restored. It wasn't just a project anymore. It had become a symbol, a bridge between his past and future. As he stepped outside, the crisp morning air greeted him. Scout was already awake, pacing around the garage, his ears perked as if anticipating the day's next adventure. Jack smiled and reached down to scratch his dog behind the ears. "Ready for another day, buddy?" he muttered, his voice still thick with sleep. The garage, now buzzing with activity, had become more than just a place for mechanical work. It had become a space for healing, for reconnecting with the parts of himself he had long buried. Jack had been giving it his all, pouring his energy into fixing not only the Jeep but the life he had lost touch with. As he worked, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of community. Even though the town of Willow Creek was small and quiet, people had begun to stop by more often, curious about the man who had taken over Mike's garage and was restoring more than just a vehicle. One afternoon, while Jack was cleaning the Jeep's interior, a familiar sound broke his focus. It was the low rumble of an engine, followed by the squeak of brakes. Mike's truck pulled into the lot once again. Jack wiped his hands on his pants and walked outside, smiling at the sight of his friend. "Hey, Mike," he greeted, leaning against the hood of the Jeep. "What's up?" Mike stepped out of the truck, his face serious but kind. "I've been thinking about something," he said, his voice steady, "and I want to share it with you." Jack raised an eyebrow, sensing the weight in Mike's tone. "Go ahead, I'm listening." Mike took a deep breath, then looked at Jack with a mixture of pride and concern. "You've done more for this place than I ever could have imagined. You've breathed new life into this garage, into this town. And I've been thinking, it's time for you to take it all." Jack frowned, unsure of what Mike meant. "Take it all? What do you mean?" Mike chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I mean this place, the garage, the land, it's all yours. You've already done the hard part, Jack. You've made it yours. You've brought it back to life. I've been holding on to it for too long, and I think it's time to let go." Jack stared at Mike, the words sinking in slowly. "You're serious?" Mike nodded. "I've been holding on to it for years, but I can see it now. You're the one meant to take it forward. This garage, the community, it needs someone like you. Someone who believes in it, who sees its potential." Jack stood there, stunned. He had come to Willow Creek with nothing, looking for an escape from his past. Yet now he found himself in the position of inheriting a legacy, a responsibility. He glanced over at the Jeep, the symbol of the past he was learning to embrace, and then at the garage around him. This place was more than just a building. It was a lifeline, a connection to the past, and the key to his future. "Mike, I don't know what to say," Jack finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to say anything," Mike replied with a soft smile. "Just take it. You've earned it. You've done more than just fix a Jeep or repair a garage. You've healed something inside this town. And that's worth more than anything." Jack was silent for a moment, taking in Mike's words. It felt surreal, but there was something undeniable about it. He had found purpose here, a sense of belonging he hadn't known he was searching for. This garage, this town, Mike was right. It needed someone to breathe life into it, to take care of it. Jack looked at Scout, who was sitting patiently beside him, as if waiting for him to make the next move. He looked back at Mike and nodded slowly. "I'll do it," Jack said, the words coming more easily now. "I'll take it. I'll make it something special." Mike's face broke into a grin, a look of pride shining in his eyes. "I knew you would. You've got a good heart, Jack. And that's what this place needs." As Mike drove off, Jack stood there for a while, staring at the garage and the Jeep. The weight of the responsibility was there, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like the beginning of something new, something worth fighting for. With Scout by his side, and the garage now his, Jack knew there was no going back. This was the life he was meant to live, and he was ready to embrace it fully. The days ahead would be filled with hard work and challenges, but Jack was no stranger to that. He had learned the value of perseverance, of not giving up when the going got tough. And now, with a new purpose, he was ready to build something that would last, something that would honor both the past and the future. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow across the land, Jack stood tall, looking at the garage that had become his second chance. It wasn't just about restoring a Jeep anymore. It was about restoring a life, his life, and the community he had come to call home. As Jack stood in front of the garage, the weight of his decision settled deep in his chest. It had been a long road to get here, and now, with the keys to the garage in his hand, he realized that his journey was just beginning. The past few weeks had been filled with moments of discovery, of fixing the Jeep, of repairing not just metal and machinery, but his own soul. But now, the real work was starting. The garage wasn't just about the Jeep anymore. It was about the community, the people who depended on it, and the new legacy Jack was building. With the fading light of evening casting long shadows over the garage lot, Jack took a deep breath. Scout, ever loyal, sat by his side, eyes alert and ears twitching at the sound of rustling leaves. Jack smiled softly at his dog before turning back toward the entrance of the garage. He could feel the weight of the place, not just as a building, but as a part of history. This was a place that had seen a lot of life, a lot of laughter, a lot of hard work, and, undoubtedly, a lot of memories. It was time for Jack to create some of his own. The following day, Jack opened the garage early, eager to get to work. The town of Willow Creek had always been quiet, but in recent weeks, people had begun to notice the changes he was making. Word had spread about the new life being breathed into the old garage, and Jack had begun to feel a growing sense of connection to the town. The first customer arrived just after sunrise, an elderly woman named Mrs. Green who had been a regular at Mike's garage for years. She pulled up in an old sedan that had seen better days. "Morning, Jack," she greeted, a warm smile on her face. "I hear you've got the place looking better than ever." Jack chuckled, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "I'm trying. What can I do for you today, Mrs. Green?" "Just a little tune-up," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Can't keep driving with my old car, making that noise. Thought I'd come see the new guy running the shop." Jack nodded, leading her car into the garage. He could already hear the faint rattling from the engine as she parked. As he popped the hood and started inspecting the engine, he couldn't help but think about the changes that had come in such a short time. The garage had gone from a place of neglect to one of purpose, and it felt good to know that people were starting to trust him. But even more than that, it felt like he was building something lasting, something that could stand the test of time. Over the next few weeks, more and more people came through the door. Some were locals, others passing through the town, but they all had one thing in common. They needed help. And Jack, with his steady hands and quiet determination, was there to give it. Whether it was fixing a car, checking the brakes, or just offering advice, Jack was becoming a cornerstone of the town, a man of action rather than words. He had always been that way, someone who showed his value through what he did, not what he said. One afternoon just as Jack was finishing up a repair on an old truck, a familiar face appeared in the doorway. It was Mike. He had stopped by a few times since handing over the garage, checking in and offering words of encouragement. But today, there was something different in his expression, something Jack couldn't quite place. "Hey, Mike," Jack greeted, wiping his hands on a rag. "What's going on?" Mike smiled faintly, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. "I've been thinking, Jack. I've seen how hard you've worked, how much you've done for this place. And I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. But there's something else I need to tell you." Jack raised an eyebrow, sensing the gravity of the moment. "What is it?" Mike hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about my own life lately, about what's left for me to do. And I've realized that this garage, this town, it's all part of something bigger than I ever realized. And I want to give you one more thing." Jack looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Mike pulled out a small, weathered envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to Jack. "It's not much," Mike said, his voice low, "but it's all I've got left to offer." Jack opened the envelope and found a set of old keys inside. His eyes widened. "What's this?" "It's the key to the land behind the garage," Mike explained. "I never told you about it, but it's been there, just sitting, waiting for the right person to use it. You've done more for this town than anyone could have imagined, Jack. You've restored not just the garage, but the heart of this place. And now, I want you to have it." Jack stared at the keys, the weight of Mike's words sinking in. He had been given so much already: the garage, the Jeep, the opportunity to rebuild his life. But this was something else entirely. This was the land that surrounded the garage, a piece of Willow Creek's history, waiting for someone to bring it to life. Jack didn't know what to say at first. He had been so focused on fixing things, on moving forward, that he hadn't considered the bigger picture. But now, as he held the keys in his hand, he realized that the future was right there in front of him. It wasn't just about fixing things anymore. It was about building a legacy, and he was ready for that challenge. "Thank you, Mike," Jack said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Mike smiled, his eyes gleaming with pride. "You're welcome, Jack. Just remember, it's not about what you've fixed, it's about what you're going to create." Jack nodded, a sense of determination settling deep in his chest. He had been given a gift, and now it was his responsibility to make it something worth remembering. Jack held the keys tightly in his hand, the weight of the decision finally settling in. It wasn't just the keys to the land behind the garage. It felt like he was holding a piece of the future. The land stretched out beyond the garage, a patchwork of overgrown grass and forgotten trees, but he could already see the potential. He had always been a man of action, of doing, but now, as he stood in the quiet garage, it was hard to ignore the significance of the moment. This was more than just a piece of land. It was a new chapter. With the Jeep nearly finished and the garage now fully his, the next step was clear. He had to build something lasting. Something that would not only honor the past, but create a future for the town and himself. It was daunting, yet exhilarating. Jack knew that he wasn't just inheriting a business. He was inheriting a responsibility. Over the next few days, he spent time mapping out a plan. He started by walking around the land, letting the possibilities take shape in his mind. He had always been good with his hands, always had a knack for fixing things, but this was different. This was more than repairs. This was about creation. As Jack walked, Scout followed closely behind, his loyal companion sensing the change in the air. The two of them made their way to the far end of the land, where a small creek ran through the property. The sound of the water flowing over the rocks was soothing, and for a moment, Jack simply stood there, listening to the rhythm of the world around him. He could see a small workshop by the creek, a place to build, to create, and maybe even to teach. It was clear now that this land, this garage, and the Jeep weren't just about him. They were about the community too. Mike's words echoed in his mind, reminding him that this place needed someone who believed in it, someone who would breathe life into it. And Jack was ready. By the end of the week, Jack had begun clearing the land, making space for what was to come. It wasn't easy work, but it felt right. He spent his mornings with a shovel, his afternoons with a hammer, and his evenings reflecting on everything that had led him here. The town was beginning to take notice. People stopped by to offer encouragement, and Jack welcomed the visits. He wasn't used to the attention, but it felt good to be a part of something bigger than himself. One afternoon, as Jack was fixing a loose board on the garage door, a car pulled up. He glanced over and saw a familiar face. It was Lena Fox, the park ranger from the nearby forest. She had visited a few times before, checking in on the progress Jack was making, but today, there was something different in her eyes. "Hey there," Lena said, stepping out of her truck. "How's everything going?" Jack wiped his hands on his jeans and smiled. "Getting there. It's a lot of work, but it's coming along." Lena looked at the land behind the garage and then back at Jack. "I've been meaning to talk to you about that land. You've got a good space here, Jack. A lot of potential." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You think so?" Lena nodded. "I do. You've got the creek, the open space, and the history of the place. You could do a lot with it." Jack felt a surge of excitement at her words. "I was thinking of building a small workshop by the creek. Maybe a place where people can learn, create, and restore things. I don't know if it'll work, but it feels right." Lena smiled, her eyes lighting up. "I think it's a great idea, and I think the town would love it. People are looking for ways to connect, to do something meaningful. You've got the skills, the vision, and the heart to make it happen." Jack felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He had been so focused on the physical work that he hadn't stopped to think about the bigger picture. But hearing Lena's encouragement made him realize that what he was building wasn't just a workshop or a garage. It was a place where people could come together, a place that could foster creativity, learning, and growth. "Thanks, Lena," Jack said, his voice filled with sincerity. "That means a lot." Lena's smile grew wider. "I've got some connections with the town council. If you need help, let me know. I'll make sure you get the support you need." Jack nodded, feeling a surge of hope. He had always been a loner, someone who worked by himself, but now he was starting to realize that the success of this project didn't just depend on him. It depended on the community, and the community was starting to believe in him. The days that followed were filled with hard work. Jack spent hours clearing the land, digging trenches for foundations, and planning the layout of the new workshop. The garage was already a place of refuge for many in town, but now it was becoming something more. It was becoming the heart of the community, a place where people could come together and build something lasting. As Jack stood at the edge of the creek one evening, watching the sunset cast a golden glow over the water, he felt a sense of peace. This was it. This was the purpose he had been searching for all along. With Scout by his side and the garage as the foundation, Jack knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. He was finally home. The days that followed were filled with anticipation and excitement as Jack watched his plans take shape. The once dilapidated land behind the garage, which had been nothing more than overgrown grass and forgotten memories, was slowly transforming into something meaningful. He had already begun clearing the space, removing weeds and debris, and marking where the new workshop would stand. It was a lot of hard work, but Jack had always been used to hard work. The simple, repetitive motions of digging, planting, and building brought him peace. Each day, he felt like he was stitching together the threads of his past, present, and future, creating a fabric that felt whole for the first time in years. The support from the community was overwhelming. As Jack spent hours out in the sun, hammering nails, measuring wood, and planning each detail of the new workshop, people from the town would stop by. Some would offer words of encouragement, others would bring tools or materials they no longer needed. Everyone seemed eager to help, excited by the changes that were taking place. It was clear now that this wasn't just Jack's project. It was the town's project. It was a shared dream of building something that would bring them all together. One afternoon, as Jack was working on the foundation of the workshop, Lena Fox pulled up in her truck. She had become a regular visitor since her first conversation with Jack, always bringing good news or helpful suggestions. This time, she was carrying a large wooden crate in the back of her truck. "Thought you might need some supplies," she said, smiling as she got out of the truck. Jack wiped his brow and smiled back. "You're a lifesaver, Lena. I figured you could use a little extra help. This old place needs it, and so do you," she said, walking over to the crate and lifting the lid. Inside, there were several boxes of nails, bags of cement, and various other tools. It was exactly what Jack had been needing to keep the project moving. "I can't thank you enough for all this," Jack said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You've done more than just give me supplies, Lena. You've given me the kind of support I didn't even know I needed." Lena shrugged it off with a grin. "We're in this together. You're not alone, Jack. This place has always been a part of the town's heart. You're just bringing it back to life." Jack paused for a moment, taking in her words. There had been a time when he thought he was in this alone, but now, as he looked around at the land and the people who were helping him, he knew that wasn't true. He wasn't just fixing a building or restoring a Jeep. He was rebuilding a community, and with that came the strength of people who cared about it. The days passed, and the workshop began to take shape. The walls went up, sturdy and strong, and the roof was framed. Jack stood back one evening, watching as the sunlight faded behind the trees, casting a golden glow on the almost complete structure. It was still rough around the edges, but it was a start. It was more than just wood and nails now. It was a dream. It was his dream. He was building something for himself, for Scout, and for the people of Willow Creek. As the workshop neared completion, Jack began to think about what it would really mean for the town. He had always been a solitary man, someone who kept to himself, but now he realized that his connection to the community was vital. This workshop wasn't just a place to work. It was a place where people could come together, share their skills, and learn from each other. It was a place where the past and present could coexist, where the memories of the old garage could be honored while building something new. The idea of opening the workshop to others, of offering classes or workshops where people could learn to build, repair, and create, began to excite Jack. He wanted this place to be more than just a place to fix things. He wanted it to be a place where people could grow, a place where the town could come together and find meaning in the work they did. Mike's words echoed in Jack's mind. "It's not about what you've fixed, it's about what you're going to create." Jack had never understood that fully until now. It wasn't just about restoring a Jeep or repairing a garage. It was about building something that could last, something that would serve the community long after he was gone. One evening, as Jack was preparing to lock up the garage for the night, he heard the sound of a truck pulling into the lot. He looked up and saw Mike's familiar truck parked outside. Mike stepped out, his eyes scanning the workshop with a mixture of pride and admiration. "It looks incredible, Jack," Mike said, his voice filled with awe. Jack smiled, wiping his hands on his jeans. "It's coming along. Slowly but surely." Mike nodded. "You've really done it. You've taken this place, this town, and made it something better." Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "I couldn't have done it without the help of everyone around here. It's not just me. It's all of us. Mike's eyes softened. Well, you're the one who got the ball rolling, Jack. You've brought life back to this place. That's something special. Jack felt a lump form in his throat as he looked around at the almost complete workshop. It was more than just a building. It was a symbol of what could happen when people came together, when they believed in something. I'm just getting started, Jack said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. But I know this place is going to mean something to this town. It already does. Mike smiled and patted Jack on the back. I'm proud of you, Jack. You've done more than just fix things. You've built something that will last. Jack stood there for a moment, taking in the full weight of Mike's words. He had come to Willow Creek looking for a quiet life, but what he had found instead was something much bigger. A sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a community. And now, with the workshop nearing completion, Jack knew that the future was full of possibilities. As the weeks passed, the workshop began to take on a life of its own. Jack could feel the pulse of the place, the energy that came from both the physical labor and the community that had begun to rally around him. It was more than just a building now. It was a gathering place, a symbol of what could happen when people came together to rebuild something that had been lost. The old garage, the Jeep, and the land had become the foundation for something new. Jack had always worked alone, but now, surrounded by people who believed in what he was doing, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The town of Willow Creek had always been quiet, tucked away in the hills, but Jack's presence had begun to stir something in the people. They stopped by to offer help, ideas, or simply to see what was happening. People who had lived in the town their whole lives were beginning to remember the sense of community they had lost. Jack had been determined to restore the garage, but in doing so, he had unknowingly restored the heart of Willow Creek. One afternoon, as Jack was working on the final touches of the workshop, a familiar face appeared at the door. It was Lena Fox, the park ranger who had become a close friend since Jack first arrived in town. She had stopped by many times, offering support and encouragement, but today, there was something different in her expression. "Hey, Jack," she said, walking toward him. "I've been meaning to talk to you." Jack set down his tools and wiped his hands on his coveralls. "What's on your mind, Lena?" Lena hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning the almost completed workshop. "I've been thinking a lot about this place. About you. About what you're doing here." Jack raised an eyebrow, sensing the seriousness in her voice. "Go on," he said, his curiosity piqued. "I've been working with the town council for a while now, and we've been talking about revitalizing Willow Creek," Lena continued. "And I think the work you're doing here, the way you've brought this place back to life, is exactly what this town needs. So, I've got a proposition for you." Jack was taken aback. He had always focused on the work at hand, never expecting anything in return. "What kind of proposition?" he asked. "We're thinking about launching a project to bring more visitors to Willow Creek, to encourage people to move here, to invest in the town. We've been looking for a cornerstone to build this initiative around, and I believe this workshop, this place you've built, could be that centerpiece." Jack stood there, silent for a moment, as he absorbed her words. "You want me to be part of this town-wide project?" he asked. Lena nodded. "Exactly. The town needs a spark, Jack, and I think you're the one who can light that spark. The workshop could serve as a hub for the community, a place where people can learn, create, and connect. It could even become a place where visitors can come to experience the history of Willow Creek, to see the restoration of the old garage and Jeep." Jack thought about it. The idea of opening the workshop to visitors, of making it a part of a larger plan to revitalize the town, was both exciting and overwhelming. He had always kept to himself, preferring solitude over the bustle of crowds, but now, as he looked around at the nearly completed workshop, he realized that it wasn't just about him anymore. "What would that look like?" Jack asked, finally breaking his silence. Lena smiled. "It would start small. We could host workshops, teach people skills, offer tours of the garage, and even have local artisans showcase their work. It would be a place for people to learn, create, and contribute to the town's growth. And with the Jeep, as a part of the exhibit, we could tell the story of Willow Creek's history, of the garage's past, and of the community that built it." Jack mulled over the idea, the weight of it settling in. He had spent so long focused on restoring the garage and the Jeep, on finding his own way, that he hadn't realized how much more could be done. This was bigger than him, bigger than the workshop. It was about bringing the town together, about creating something that could outlast him, something that would leave a legacy for future generations. "I think it's a great idea," Jack finally said, his voice filled with resolve. "Let's do it. Let's bring this town back to life." Lena's face lit up with a smile. "I knew you'd say that," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "We'll work together, Jack. The town council will support us, and we'll make Willow Creek a place people will want to visit, to live, and to invest in." Jack nodded, his heart swelling with a new sense of purpose. This was what he had been waiting for, the chance to build something lasting, something that would benefit not just himself but the entire town. With Lena's help and the community's support, he knew they could make it happen. As the days passed, Jack's vision began to take shape. The workshop became a place of learning, creativity, and connection. People from all over Willow Creek and beyond came to see what Jack had built, to participate in workshops, and to learn the skills that Jack had mastered over the years. The Jeep was a centerpiece, a reminder of the town's history, and a symbol of the resilience that had brought them all together. Jack's life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. He had come to Willow Creek to escape his past, but in doing so, he had found a future. And with that future came the responsibility of shaping it, of making Willow Creek a place where people could come together, build, and create a legacy of their own. Jack stood in front of the workshop, watching the sun set behind the hills. He felt a sense of peace wash over him, knowing that this was only the beginning. With Scout by his side, the workshop as his foundation, and the community behind him, Jack was ready to build a future that would stand the test of time. As the months passed, the workshop in Willow Creek continued to grow, evolving from a small restoration project into a hub of activity and creativity. The town, once quiet and stagnant, began to feel alive again. Jack had transformed not only the garage and the Jeep, but also the very fabric of the community. People were coming together to learn, create, and build something meaningful. The vision he had set in motion was now a reality. It wasn't just about the Jeep or the tools anymore. It was about the people who walked through the door, the conversations that took place, and the knowledge that was passed down from one generation to the next. The workshops Jack had planned were a hit. The first one, focused on basic car repairs, was packed. People who had never picked up a wrench were now learning how to change a tire, check the oil, and fix a flat. The sense of pride that came with fixing something with your own hands was evident on everyone's face. Jack had always believed in the value of hard work, and now, he was seeing others experience the same satisfaction. But it wasn't just about mechanical work. Jack had opened up the space to other forms of creativity as well. Artists came in to use the workshop for their projects. Crafters worked on furniture, and woodworkers showed others the art of carving and building. The garage had become a melting pot of skills, ideas, and innovation. It was a place where anyone with a passion could come and share their knowledge. Jack wasn't just running a business. He was building a community of creators. One afternoon, while Jack was working on the engine of a classic car, he heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching. He looked up to see Lena Fox, the park ranger who had been a constant supporter since the beginning. She was carrying a small envelope in her hand, a serious look on her face. Jack wiped his hands on his coveralls and stood up to greet her. "Hey, Lena," he said, his voice warm. "What's up?" Lena handed him the envelope. "I've got something for you," she said, her tone a little more formal than usual. Jack took the envelope, curious, and opened it. Inside was a letter, along with a small brochure. His eyes widened as he read the letter. It was an invitation for the Willow Creek workshop to be featured in a regional magazine dedicated to small-town innovations and community-driven projects. The magazine wanted to highlight the work Jack had done to revive the garage and make it a focal point for creativity in the region. Jack looked up at Lena, astonished. "Is this for real?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's real," Lena replied with a smile. "The town has taken notice of what you've done here, Jack. You've turned this place into something special, and now, the rest of the region is going to see it too. This could be a huge opportunity for Willow Creek." Jack felt a rush of emotion. He had never expected this kind of recognition. When he first arrived in Willow Creek, he had been looking for a quiet place to heal, a place to get away from the past. But now, he had found something much more important, something that mattered not just to him, but to the entire town. "I don't even know what to say," Jack admitted, his voice thick with gratitude. "This is amazing." Lena smiled. You don't have to say anything. You've earned it, Jack. You've built this, and now the world is starting to take notice. The thought of the workshop being featured in a magazine was surreal, but as Jack looked around the garage, he realized it wasn't just about the recognition. It was about the people, the lessons learned, and the connections made. He had set out to fix a Jeep, but what he had built was something much bigger. It was a community, a legacy, and a place where people could come together to create, learn, and grow. As the days passed, Jack prepared for the magazine feature. The workshop was busier than ever, with more people signing up for the upcoming classes and workshops. Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he watched the workshop come to life each day. The magazine article was a chance to share the story of Willow Creek and the workshop with a wider audience. But Jack knew that the true value of what he had created wasn't in the article or the recognition. It was in the impact the workshop had on the people who walked through the door. That evening, after a long day of work, Jack stood outside the garage, looking out over the land he had transformed. The evening air was cool, and the sound of crickets filled the air. Scout, his faithful dog, sat beside him, looking up at the horizon. Jack's heart swelled with gratitude. He had found his purpose here, in Willow Creek, and he knew that whatever the future held, he was ready for it. The next day, the magazine crew arrived. They spent hours taking photos of the workshop, interviewing Jack, and speaking with the people who had been a part of the community Jack had built. It was a whirlwind of activity, and Jack found himself feeling both excited and humbled. As the crew packed up to leave, the editor of the magazine, a woman named Emily, approached Jack with a smile. "This is exactly the kind of story we wanted to tell," she said. "You've done something truly special here, Jack. It's not just about fixing cars or building things. It's about bringing people together, creating a place where people can learn and grow. You've built a legacy that will last long after the article is published." Jack smiled, feeling a wave of pride wash over him. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady. "I couldn't have done it without the community. This is just the beginning." As the magazine article was published, the town of Willow Creek began to receive more visitors. People came to see the workshop, to participate in the classes, and to learn from Jack and the others who were part of the community. The garage had become a symbol of what could happen when people believed in something, when they worked together to create something meaningful. And for Jack, that was the greatest reward. He had come to Willow Creek looking for peace, but what he had found was something much more powerful, a sense of purpose, a community, and a place where he could truly make a difference. The article about Jack and his workshop in Willow Creek was published, and the response was overwhelming. The small town, which had once been quiet and unnoticed, was suddenly on the map. People from nearby cities, curious about the story of the man who had brought a garage back to life, began visiting Willow Creek. The town saw an influx of tourists, local artisans, and even potential investors. But for Jack, the recognition wasn't the goal. What mattered was the community that was coming together, the people who believed in the same vision of rebuilding something meaningful. The workshop was thriving. People were signing up for classes, sharing their skills, and learning from each other. Jack had never imagined that his love for fixing things would grow into a space where creativity, knowledge, and connection could flourish. But now, with each new person who walked through the door, Jack felt the truth of it. He wasn't just restoring old things. He was helping people find their own purpose. One sunny afternoon, as Jack was working on a project in the back of the workshop, a familiar voice called out to him. "Hey, Jack." It was Mike, the former owner of the garage, who had become more than just a mentor. He had become a friend. Jack turned around to see Mike walking toward him, a grin on his face. "How's it going, old man?" Jack greeted with a smile. Mike chuckled and waved him off. "I'm not that old," he said, lowering his voice. "But I'll take the compliment. I was just in town, and I thought I'd stop by and see how things were going." Jack wiped his hands on a rag and nodded toward the new space. "It's all coming together. You were right, Mike. This place, it's something special." Mike looked around, his eyes scanning the workshop, the people busy working and chatting. "I can see that. I've been hearing good things. It's incredible, Jack. You've done something amazing here." Jack smiled, but there was something more in Mike's tone, a deep sense of pride. "I couldn't have done it without the people who've helped. The town, the folks who've come together, they're the real reason this place is what it is." Mike nodded thoughtfully. "That's true. It's been incredible to watch. But it's also because of you. You've given this place a purpose again. and that's something no one else could have done. Jack didn't respond right away. He had always been a man of action, focused on the work in front of him, but hearing Mike's words, he realized how far he had come. He had started out as a man trying to escape his past, but now, he was building something that would last. And more than that, he was part of a community that was growing stronger every day. You know, Mike continued, the town's council reached out to me yesterday. They've been talking about starting a community fund to help other local projects. They want to know if you'd be interested in working with them on it. Jack looked at him, surprised. What kind of projects? Mike shrugged. Anything really. They're looking to invest in more community-driven initiatives. And they know that you've got the vision to help make this town something bigger than just a stop on the map. Jack stood still for a moment, the weight of the opportunity sinking in. He hadn't expected this. He had always thought of the garage as his small, personal project. But now, it was clear that it had grown into something much bigger. It wasn't just about fixing things. It was about changing lives, about creating a space where people could come together, share ideas, and help each other grow. I don't know, Jack said, his voice uncertain. It sounds like a big commitment. I've already got the workshop to run, and I don't want to take on too much. Mike smiled, his eyes twinkling with the same energy Jack had seen in him all those months ago. You've already made a difference, Jack. You've built something that matters, and people are noticing. This community is ready for the next step, and I think you're the one to help lead it. Jack thought for a moment, his mind racing through the possibilities. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the future of Willow Creek, about leaving a legacy for the generations to come. If he could help grow the town, make it a place where people could thrive, then maybe he had found his true calling. All right, Jack said finally, a sense of determination settling in. Let's do it. Let's help the town grow. Mike slapped him on the back, smiling. I knew you'd say that. I'm proud of you, Jack. Over the next few weeks, Jack worked closely with the town's council and local leaders to develop the community fund. They created initiatives to support small businesses, promote local artisans, and encourage sustainability in the town. Jack became more involved in the town's future, and with every new project, he felt more connected to the people around him. It wasn't just about the garage anymore. It was about creating a future for the entire town. With each new person who joined the workshop, each new idea that sparked, Jack could feel Willow Creek transforming. The workshop wasn't just a place to fix cars or build furniture. It had become a place where the town's heart beat. As the town grew, so did Jack. He had come to Willow Creek to find peace, but now, he had found something far more powerful. He had found a purpose. And with that purpose came a future full of possibilities. The work in Willow Creek continued to evolve as the community, once quiet and fading, blossomed into something new. Jack had become more than just a man fixing cars and restoring a Jeep. He had become a symbol of the town's resilience and growth. The projects and initiatives he had started were beginning to bear fruit, and people were noticing. The community fund was taking shape, with new businesses opening, local artisans showcasing their work, and more people feeling inspired to invest in the town. It was no longer a place defined by what it had lost. It was becoming a place defined by what it could become. Jack had found his place in this transformation, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant in shaping the town's future. He felt a deeper sense of connection to the people who lived here, the ones who had stuck around through the tough times, who had kept the town's spirit alive even when it seemed like no one cared. One afternoon, as Jack was finishing a repair on a car in the workshop, he heard the familiar sound of a truck pulling into the lot. He glanced up, wiping his hands on a rag, and saw Mike's truck parked in front of the garage. Mike had been a constant presence in Jack's journey, from the day he first inherited the garage to now, watching as Jack made the place his own. Jack walked outside, smiling as he greeted his old friend. Mike, how's it going? Mike grinned, stepping out of the truck. Couldn't stay away, Jack, he said with a chuckle. I've been hearing all about the changes in town. I had to come see for myself. Well, you're just in time, Jack replied. Things are starting to really take off around here. We've got some new projects lined up, and people are actually starting to take notice of Willow Creek. Mike raised an eyebrow. That's good to hear. You've been putting in the work, Jack. It's paying off. The town feels different now. Jack nodded, feeling a swell of pride. It's not just me, though. The whole town's getting involved. It's all starting to come together. Mike looked around at the bustling workshop, The people moving about, the energy in the air. I can see that. I've been talking to the council about some bigger plans for Willow Creek, and they're all on board with what you're doing. There's talk of expanding the community fund, getting more people involved in the town's growth. Jack's eyes lit up. Really? That's incredible. I didn't think we'd get this kind of support so quickly. Mike smiled. You've earned it, Jack. This place is different because of you. The town's starting to see what it can be, and they want to help make it happen. Jack thought about it for a moment, the weight of what Mike was saying sinking in. He had come to Willow Creek with nothing but a desire to escape his past. Now, he was building a future, not just for himself, but for the entire town. It's funny, Jack said quietly, looking out at the land that had once seemed like a barren patch of dirt. I never imagined any of this. I thought I'd fix a Jeep and move on. But now, it feels like this is where I'm supposed to be. Mike placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. You were always meant to be here. This town needed someone who believed in it, someone who could see its potential. You gave it that. Jack smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. Thanks, Mike. I couldn't have done it without your help. Mike waved him off. You're doing it all, Jack. I'm just glad I could be part of it. They stood there for a while, watching the sun sink behind the hills. It was a peaceful moment, one that felt full of promise. Jack had found something in Willow Creek that he hadn't known he was looking for, a sense of belonging, a purpose. It wasn't about the Jeep or the garage anymore. It was about the future, the legacy he was building, and the community he was helping to revive. As the weeks went by, the projects continued to grow. The community fund expanded, with new people contributing and new businesses sprouting up. Jack's workshop had become the heart of Willow Creek, a place where people could learn, create, and connect. The town was no longer just a stop on the map. It was a place with a bright future, a future built on the hard work and dreams of the people who lived there. One evening, as Jack was locking up the garage after a long day, he felt a familiar tug in his chest. He glanced over at Scout, who was standing beside him, looking out at the town. Jack smiled softly, his thoughts drifting to everything that had happened since he first arrived in Willow Creek. It felt like a lifetime ago. He had come here with nothing, running away from a past he didn't want to face. But now he was home. The work wasn't finished. There were still challenges ahead, still things to build and fix. But Jack was no longer afraid of what was to come. With Scout by his side, the workshop as his foundation, and the town behind him, Jack knew that whatever the future held, he was ready for it. He wasn't just rebuilding a garage or restoring a Jeep. He was building a future, and he was doing it with the people who had helped him along the way. And that, Jack realized, was the most important thing of all. As the seasons changed in Willow Creek, the transformation of the town became undeniable. Jack stood at the edge of the workshop one evening, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The quiet hum of the town in the background, the sound of people working together, and the sense of pride that filled the air was a far cry from the empty streets Jack had first encountered when he arrived. This was no longer just a quiet town. It had become a thriving community. The workshop had grown into more than just a place of work. It had become a symbol of what was possible when people came together. The town's collective effort to revitalize itself was being felt everywhere, from the new businesses that had opened to the pride that now filled the streets. People were no longer just passing through. They were investing in Willow Creek, in its future, in its community. Jack had taken the leap, trusting in the potential of the land and the people around him, and now, standing in front of the workshop, he could see the results of that leap. What had started as a small idea, restoring a garage and a Jeep, had grown into something far bigger. It had created opportunities for others, for the people who had stuck with the town through thick and thin, and for those who had only recently discovered what Willow Creek had to offer. Jack's eyes drifted to the Jeep, which now sat proudly in the center of the workshop, a testament to the past, to the lives lived, and to the new life it had been given. The Jeep wasn't just a vehicle. It was a reminder of what could be achieved when something old was given a second chance. Jack knew the Jeep symbolized more than just his personal journey. It represented the town's own rebirth. As the days passed, more and more people began to find their way into the workshop, drawn not just by the classes or the opportunity to fix something, but by the sense of connection that filled the space. The town had come to understand what Jack had known from the beginning. It wasn't about fixing things. It was about restoring purpose, about giving people a place to belong. It was about showing that change, no matter how small, could create a ripple effect that would spread throughout the community. One afternoon, as Jack worked on a new project in the corner of the workshop, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Lena Fox walking toward him, a bright smile on her face. "Jack, we've been getting some great feedback," she said, her eyes glowing with excitement. "People are talking about the workshop. They're excited about what's happening here. We've got more people signing up for the classes, and even more businesses are showing interest in Willow Creek." Jack wiped his hands on his coveralls, feeling a sense of pride that he hadn't fully allowed himself to feel before. "That's great to hear, Lena," he said, his voice steady. "I never expected it to take off like this, but I'm glad to see people taking ownership of it. It's not just about the work we do here, it's about what it represents. It's about the future." Lena nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You've done something incredible. Here, Jack. You've given people hope, and that's something Willow Creek hasn't had in a long time." Jack looked around the workshop, the hum of activity in the air, the sound of tools and laughter mixing together. He thought about how far they had come, the hours spent restoring the Jeep, the work that had gone into the community fund, and the way the town had come together to make it all possible. "It's amazing, isn't it?" Jack said quietly. "I came here thinking I was just fixing a Jeep. But now, I see that this is something bigger than me. It's something that can last. It's about giving people the chance to build something that matters, to contribute to something bigger than themselves." Lena smiled, her pride in Jack evident. "Exactly. You've created a legacy, Jack. And I think it's just the beginning." Over the next few weeks, Jack continued to pour his heart into the workshop. More people came, eager to be part of what was happening in Willow Creek. He taught, he repaired, and he listened to the stories of people who, like him, had found their way to this town in search of something. As the workshop flourished, so did the town. New shops opened, the streets filled with energy, and the old buildings began to take on new life. It was clear that the spirit of Willow Creek had been revived. Jack had given the town something to rally around, and now they were all working together to ensure it thrived. But even as Jack felt a sense of fulfillment, he knew that the work was far from over. There were still projects to complete, still dreams to build. But he no longer saw that as a burden. He saw it as an opportunity to continue the work he had started. And with Scout by his side, the community's support, and the workshop as his foundation, Jack knew he was ready for whatever came next. The journey had changed him. It had shown him that sometimes, the things you're meant to build aren't just physical structures. They're communities, relationships, and legacies. And with that realization, Jack felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, building something that would last for generations to come.